Hey guys, welcome to Know. I'm Adam Kovic.
And I'm Bruce Greene.
And we have possibly the world's saddest rumor to report on today.
Love is over, my friends. If you got a drink around, get ready to pour it out because we got some really, really bad news.
Yeah, and before we get into it, let's make this one really goddamn clear. We don't want to be delivering this news. We are all huge HalfLife fans right here. But still, our job is to report on the news, so here it is.
All right, so we have an anonymous source inside Valve that has told us the state of Half-Life 3, and it's not looking good. In fact, it's looking really, really bad, and Mr. Freeman won't be rising shining anytime soon.
That hurts.
Yeah.
So according to our source, Half-Life 3 is technically in development.
Right now.
Yeah, no, it's happening.
That's good.
But only by a skeleton crew of about 10 people.
That's bad.
We hear that the game's script is complete.
Okay.
The story and the events of all the game are laid out. That's it.
Oh, okay. Lawrence, keep going for us.
Yeah, it actually gets worse, believe it or not. Our source tells us that Valve's management isn't invested in the game coming out at all, and actually have moved developers and resources away from the Half-Life 3 project to keep it from even moving forward.
Yeah.
Now, we get it. That sounds like bullshit. Why would Valve ever do that, right? They know everybody wants the game. They know it's going to sell a lot, so why would they stifle it like that? It actually makes sense if you hear us out, so just give us a bit. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, so our source goes on to tell us that Valve is making so much cash from Steam and their microtransaction-based games like Team Fortress 2 and Dota 2 that they have no reason to pursue the game from a business perspective.
All right, so to make matters worse, apparently Valve is actually afraid to release the game at all. As our source describes, releasing a less than perfect Half-Life 3 would bring on such waves of internet hate that it's not worth risking in the first place.
Right, this sounds a little unbelievable. Please hold off judgment until we give you the entire story. And sit tight because there's a lot to tell.
Right, our source tells us that back in 2009, Half-Life 3 was well into development. It had a team of about 100 people at the time, though it began losing headcount as Valve moved workers off that project and onto ones that needed immediate attention, like Left 4 Dead 2, Portal 2, and Dota 2.
And since then, they haven't really been releasing a lot of games, so this seems real.
Yeah.
So at the time, Valve management were just shifting resources to finish games that needed help to hit release dates. That all changed in 2012, though. This one's going to blow your minds. When BioWare released Mass Effect 3.
Right, so Lawrence, tell them about it if they're unfamiliar.
Yeah, most of us, I think, remember what happened when Mass Effect 3 came out.
Rabble.
Yeah, basically there were a group of people that were just super pissed off about how the game ended.
Yeah.
They thought it didn't live up to the quality that they felt the series deserved. So, BioWare just got slammed with this hate mob on the internet of people saying, you've done terrible, like, we hate you, you deserve to die, all these things. Valve saw that. They saw the anger and hatred, and our source says this is actually a critical factor in Valve deciding to move resources away from Half-Life 3.
Our source also says that this is commonly referenced by Valve management when they're asked internally why Half-Life 3 lost developers and resources.
Right, yeah, they saw how passionate fans turned on the series they loved and didn't want that to happen to the company's banner franchise, Half-Life.
So over the process of the next few years, workers were moved from Half-Life 3 and onto other projects that made money, namely the microtransaction-based games that are free to play.
Yep.
And that puts the project where it is now, a staff of 10 or so and a management that is content to let it wither and die.
Yeah, that's the information we received, but we always like to ask the question, does this make sense? So we did a lot of research to check this story because, let's be honest, we wanted it to not be true. Lawrence, take it away.
Yeah, okay, so as we figure it, the story has two major components that make it hang together. First, there's the premise that Valve is making so much money already that a Half-Life 3 isn't necessary to them as a business. And then second, there's the aspect that a potentially negative backlash to Half-Life 3 would be so violent that it could cause legitimate damage to the company and its employees. Now, the first part of that is a lot easier to tackle since it's more objective. It's pure money. So, let's take a look at how much Valve is making right now and estimate how much they could stand to make if they released a Half-Life 3, and then we can see if that number actually measures up or not.
Yeah.
For all this data, we partnered with market intelligence firm Superdata to find estimates on Valve's revenue through their free-to-play titles and Steam as a publishing platform. Our research turned up that Valve is, surprise, surprise, making more money than God.
Superdata reveals that Valve's top 3 titles, Dota 2, CSGO, and TF2, earned the company over $400 million in 2014.
Jeez. That may seem stupidly high, but VentureBeat reported in March 2014 that Valve pulled in $18 million every month.
Yeah, that same article from VentureBeat mentions that League of Legends, the world's biggest MOBA, earned the same amount, $18 million, in 5 days. So yeah, MOBAs earn shitloads of cash, and Dota 2's cashing in on that.
In addition to that $400 million, Valve takes a 30% cut of all third-party transactions on Steam.
Jeez.
Now, since Valve has never released revenue data for Steam, these figures become less reliable, so we'll only deal in conservative estimates.
Yeah, Lawrence, why don't you take the Super Data stuff?
All right, so this is the biggest number of all. Super Data puts Steam total revenue, and this includes first and third party sales, trading card, like all money that goes through Steam, conservatively at $1.5 billion for 2014.
Whoa.
And now we've got some math. So sorry about this, but we'll make it quick. So if you take Valve's first party revenue of $400 million out of that total chunk, you're left with $1.1 billion in third party revenue. Valve's 30% cut of that $1.1 billion is $330 million. That's
Sure.
what they're making off third party transactions.
Yeah.
Now, if you add both those back together, they're 400 from first party and 330 million from third party. You get a total revenue of 730 million, and that's their 3 first-party games and third-party licensing fees all wrapped together.
Yep.
So that's almost $750 million for 3 free-to-play games and 1 publishing platform.
That's insanity.
Well,
They're rich, you're not.
Yeah.
I'm PC Gamer, I get that money too.
So there is a lot of good news. Obviously, Valve is doing really well.
Yeah, they are.
It's a very small, independent company.
That's good for them.
And they're just swimming in cash. But let's move to the very sad part. Let's go ahead and look at how much Half-Life 3 might earn if it were to come out, say, tomorrow.
Right, we can use sales of Half-Life 1 and 2 to make rough estimates of how Half-Life 3 might sell. So like before, concrete sales data is kind of hard to come across, so we'll just work with the numbers we can find and estimate conservatively from there.
According to a profile in Game Informer, Half-Life 1 sold 9.3 million units at retail. Half-Life 2 sold 9 million units according to Steam Spy. Given that Steam is required to play that game, we're treating this as a rough equivalent to total sales.
Right, and again, according to Steam Spy, Half-Life 2 Episode 1 sold 5.6 million, and Episode 2 sold 5.0 million.
Right, it gets a little murky because of Steam sales, Orange Box, there's a million different factors here.
Yeah.
But given that sales numbers didn't jump dramatically from Half-Life 1 to Half-Life 2,
they didn't.
we would guess that the same would continue for Half-Life 3.
Okay.
But just to be sporting, let's say that Half-Life 3 sells 30% more units than Half-Life 2. I think that's fair.
Yeah, no, if Half-Life 3 were to sell 12 million units, which would be phenomenal, and all of them were at full US retail, Valve would earn $720 million in sales, or just about a year's worth of their current revenue.
Yeah, that's great money, don't get us wrong.
it is.
But it's not make it or break it cash,
Yeah.
especially considering they're already making that money.
Yeah, and it's also important to remember that Valve is a private company. They don't even have investors pressuring them every quarter. If they did, odds are Half-Life 3 would be out already.
That's true. So our conclusion is that financially, it makes sense that Valve doesn't feel any pressure to develop or release Half-Life 3 from a financial perspective.
Yep.
Based both on their current revenue and generous sales projections, they just don't need it.
No, they really don't. So now the second part of the story, it's a little more tricky, right, Lawrence?
Yeah, because this is the subjective part of the story. It's not up to us to say whether Valve is right or wrong in thinking that the potential backlash to Half-Life 3 isn't worth the risk of releasing it.
Yeah.
We do, however, believe that they believe that, if that makes sense.
It does, it does.
And we want to be clear about this, though, because this can be a pretty intense subject of discussion on the internet nowadays, whether gamers are ruining gaming or whatever that. We're not saying that. We're not saying it's your fault or the gamer's fault in general that the game is not in active development. But surely you, the viewer, must appreciate that there would be a goddamn firestorm if Half-Life 3 came out and was in any way not perfect.
Yep.
Valve employees would get death threats, crazed gamers would dox employees, they'd call in the SWAT team on them. They would harass them to the ends of the earth.
Yeah,
That
they really
happens
would.
now for people that are releasing games that aren't as hyped as Half-Life 3.
Yeah.
So we have to believe that it would happen if Half-Life 3 came out and ran at 59 frames a second instead of 60. Some stupid shit.
I mean, hell, just look what happened to former Daybreak Game Company president John Smedley.
yeah.
He's been attacked repeatedly just for running a company that makes video games. Someone called in a bomb threat on his plane and grounded the flight,
Yeah.
and now he's resigned,
Yep.
which is to say we think the pressure is getting to him, and I don't blame him.
No, I don't blame him at all.
Yeah.
We're not saying you do this stuff, you, the audience, the gamers, whatever, just that people do, and they're out there right now.
They're
Jack,
Yeah, they're jerks.
It just takes one kid to piss in the sandbox. It ruins it for everybody. Still, something about this did seem a little strange to us. Half-Life 2 was hyped to hell, and Valve developed and released that game. So why be so scared now?
Yeah, according to our source, gaming culture has changed since 2004. It absolutely has been 10 years. To use the source's words directly, sadly, most people are shitheads.
Yeah. The source remembers that circa 2004, the only people discussing games online were game fans.
Yeah, that's true.
At some point, positivity and leniency got traded in by a group of gamers that could never be pleased and consistently shouted for game developers to kill themselves.
Kill yourself.
Again, to use our source's words directly, if Half-Life 3 came with a free blowjob included with every purchase, gamers would bitch that they didn't cup the balls properly.
Well, I mean, you gotta cut the balls.
Well, that's true. You get to touch
Properly.
So does this aspect of the story make sense? Kind of asking the room, but
Okay.
it's not really a question of whether it's true or not. It's more understanding that Valve believes hype levels are so high around Half-Life 3 and that gamers act so hateful when they're disappointed that there's really no point in even trying to release the game.
Yeah, Lawrence, do you think this makes sense?
Yeah, I think it does, and I don't want it to. Like we keep saying that, but I can put myself in Valve's position
Yeah.
and realize, Jesus Christ, like this is probably the most hyped game of all time. Even the name, like Half-Life 3 appearing anywhere on the internet makes people go insane. So if somebody's looking at you and they're going to come after you, if anything they don't like is in there, do you have and you're already making shitloads of cash? You're just like, fine.
Yeah.
I'll just let it sit.
Yeah, you just kind of sit on your laurels. Let's be constructive here. At the very least, we can say the project is not dead, and Valve is not stupid. To the contrary, in fact, right now they're making the judgment call that putting Half-Life 3 into full development isn't worth the risk.
But there may come a day when maybe it is. So
Yeah, that'd be great.
When will that day be?
First, the threat of a negative backlash goes away. Maybe given enough time, the stakes of a Half-Life 3 wouldn't be so high. How long would that take?
Decades, maybe.
It's gonna pretty much never, as it turns out, at all.
It's tempting to think of a happy, welcoming internet that wouldn't send death threats to Valve over Half-Life 3, but we honestly don't want to sound like we're lecturing you guys here. But haters will hate, and
as always.
so on and so forth,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. There are shitheads online.
There really are. Second, there's something more valuable than unit sales to be gained. Counter-Strike became the instrument that put Steam on so many computers. Even though people hated it at the time, it was the move that made Steam the PC standard it is today.
Yeah, maybe Half-Life 3 could be a HTC Vive exclusive.
Cool.
Sadly, if it were going to be, it would have to be way further in development than it is now. I mean, even based on Spool's reaction right now, there's already half the people who would not be into that.
Yeah, let's be honest. If Valve announced Half-Life 3 as a Steam VR exclusive today, you can bet there'd be change.org petitions and death threats out the ass.
Yep.
Lawrence, it'd be really bad, right?
Yeah, it would be really bad. Also, Valve has other properties that they could convert into exclusive projects and not even face that potential backlash.
Yep.
They could make a Portal game for the HTC Vive and just neatly sidestep this notion that Valve owes it to their dedicated fan base to release a normal version on normal PCs. Fuck you, Gabe Newell, you greedy piece of shit.
Whoa, slow down.
What if they just changed the name?
To what?
Half-Life Reborn.
Nice job. Perfect.
Then it's not Half-Life 3 and the hype is not.
No,
I'm
that's
saying
not true.
since the time we've been waiting for either Episode 3 or Half-Life 3, fans completely remade the first Half-Life. Well, at least the first 2/3 of it.
That's
but
true, they
still.
did, yeah,
So maybe there will be some platform in the future, be it SteamOS, Steam VR, or something we don't even know about yet, that would justify Half-Life 3's existence.
Yeah.
Or maybe just make it a time exclusive so that it will eventually come to PCs. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's going to make people angry too.
You can't please anybody.
Yeah, no. So finally, Valve's revenue situation might change to the extent that they need Half-Life 3 sales.
I see a day when that happens.
Maybe. Well, just given enough time, revenues from Valve's big three titles might sag so much that they'd need to revive the franchise.
But odds are you don't want the game developed under that atmosphere.
That's a good point.
If for some reason Valve gets really under the gun and has to squeeze out a Half-Life 3 just to stay afloat, it might end up really tanking the franchise as opposed to just being slightly less than perfect.
Oh, and by the way, we're not implying a boycott of Dota 2 or anything stupid like that. It's not like that at all. It's also conceivable that the company could go public and thus be at the mercy of investors' demands. With the kinds of revenue they're making now, they have no reason to ever go public.
No, not at all. So there you guys have it. That's the entire story.
Yeah.
Half-Life 3 is only just barely in development, maybe even on life support, and nobody at Valve ever intends for the game to actually be finished.
Yeah, listen, we want Half-Life 3. I personally absolutely want Half-Life 3, but we can understand that Valve has no reason to make it right now.
Yeah, maybe the next time you see someone yelling at devs or saying that games cause AIDS online, realize that developers see that too, and it doesn't make them particularly motivated to make more games for us.
Lawrence, do you think that there's anything people can do out there to convince Valve to release this game?
No. I think if there's a sea change in gaming culture, I think if Valve sees a high-profile developer release a big game that's not so great, and for some reason the internet's like, you know what, you tried. You tried, and God bless you, you did it. And you know what? This game's not so great, but it's all right. We're still gonna buy it because we love you dudes. And if they saw that, maybe, but fuck, like that would ever happen. So
Yeah.
the truth is, they don't have to from a number of reasons, so they're just not going to. It's hard for me to say that that's a bad call.
Ironically, the best sort of attitude we could adopt as a culture is to say we don't want Half-Life 3. We don't need it. Who cares?
Reverse psychology. I like this.
And then Valve will get so excited and go, no, we'll give them the best fucking game ever made.
All right. So let's start saying we don't want it.
I don't want Half-Life 3.
All right. I don't want Half-Life 3 either.
I still want it.
I still want it.
Shut
Shut
up!
up! Reverse psychology, bros.
God damn it.
Please like and subscribe for more reverse psychology about Half-Life 3.
Don't like and subscribe.
Oh, okay.
Nice podcast.
Everyone use Origin.